Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on our first LinkedIn Live of our mini-series, HR in Action. I'm Jack. I'm from the One Group, about 10 years here now and specialising in the HR market. Today, we've enlisted the support, the guidance, the knowledge of Jacqui. We've worked with Jacqui for previously. Great feedback. I know you actually deal with a lot of our partners directly as well. So, I don't know if you'll take a moment to chat about yourself.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Hi. Well, my background is that I used to work in HR. I'm also a trained therapist. So since 2013, I've been developing programs of training that brings together the best from the world of HR. So developing your people and my understanding of psychology to help support employers to give their best to people, to create good working cultures, and to encourage people to just be happy at work and enjoy their working lives.
We spend enough time here, don't we?
Yeah, we are so much more productive when we're happy.
I completely agree. So just to let everyone know, we are pre-recording this session, but we are absolutely here behind the screens on hand with any questions that might pop up during the way. So I think we'll cut straight into it. So what we're looking to focus on today is those day one worker rights and how that then really makes your onboarding process, your induction to a company, even more important. We want to get this right for everybody. So, setting the scene here, looking at the big picture, talk to us, Jacqui, about why is it so important for HR teams, for managers to get those first few days and weeks right when somebody joins them?
Well, under the proposed new legislation that's in the Employment Rights Bill, people will have protection from unfair dismissal from day one going forward. Now, that part of the bill is not due to be in place until next autumn, but now is the time to get your managers upskilled to make sure that they are robustly managing probation and they're making the right recruitment decisions early. The cost of getting it wrong at the moment is high. It will become just a bigger burden if we wait until the legislation comes in. So preparing now just is more sustainable for business.
And it's a tough recruitment market for companies at the moment as well. So you don't want to risk a bad onboarding, do you? So outside of this on its own. And when, in your experience, time supporting companies, but equally being within companies, what are some of the most common mistakes that businesses or, managers can make when it comes to probation periods, that critical time here?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. One mistake they make is actually during the recruitment process, even before onboarding, is that, as you've rightly said, it's a tough market out there at the moment. So getting the right person initially, and managers that make that decision to hire the best of a bad bunch are automatically on the back foot. And then when the person joins, if they are not the right person and they are not managed robustly, they're not set clear expectations, they don't have goals and objectives that are easy to achieve and that they understand well, then people can go under the radar. And managers who don't know how to manage, who don't know how to those difficult conversations that say, I'm really sorry, it's not working, this is where I need you to focus. If they're not having those conversations really early on, then A, you've brought somebody in who's not the right person for the role, and B, you're just letting them run with it. And what I'm seeing is, at the moment, we've got 2 years in which to make the decision about whether this person is the right person for the role. I've seen managers take the whole 2 years and they've passed their probation. They've allowed people through probation, even though they've got so many doubts, but they're still not comfortable having those difficult conversations. So they allow people to pass probation. And then they get to a point just as they're coming up to that 2 year window that says, right, that's it, I've had enough. I've tried everything.
These situations, they keep people up at night as well, don't they? So actually, I guess, take the legalities out of this. There's two sides. You've got the well-being and, maybe the success, the feeling that managers have to create that high-functioning delivery team. who are happy versus knowing that it's caused infractions, which is actually another subject we'll cover later, won't we? Conflicts and impact of that. But these are things that keep people awake at night. They really are. We've all been there. We've all maybe made a hire that we should have taken more time on.
Absolutely. I have done it myself. And, you know, I hold my hands up and say, I've done it myself. I should have revisited, gone back to the start, looked at different CVs, looked at different applications. But in a difficult market, when you've got time constraints and you're really busy, you just want someone doing the job. And it feels like someone's better than nobody. But the reality is, it's a whole heap of stress and trouble going forward, and it's even more sleepless nights
than you ever need. And so going from into like sort of the legal and the practical aspects here. So I think we can all probably gauge the general day-to-day and why it's important. But when we look at the nitty-gritty here, it's like the legal and the practical, what key employment rights should HR managers, you know, leaders in organisations be aware of from day one? You know, we want to operate within the parameters of the law here. What do they need to know?
So HR and business owners should be encouraging their managers to understand the changes in legislation. So from day one, from autumn next year, from day one, people will be protected from unfair dismissal. So what that means is you have to take people through due process. So you have to follow your capability policy and procedure if it's not working out. But the new legislation does give you what they're calling a statutory probation period. At the moment, we're talking about that being 9 months, but that's not set in stone just yet. We don't know.
Which is far longer as well, isn't it? You know, we talk 3 to 6 months in general at the moment. But 9 months is a massive change for people.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that you should change your contracts. You definitely should not change your contractual period.
So we are saying to people there that they can keep their 3 to 6 months in their contractual. The law is maybe in addition when needed.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So the law is saying in that statutory initial period of probation, it's an opportunity to test fit. It's a two-way test as well. Is this right for the individual as well as is this right for the business? But you will have a statutory period, and like I say, 9 months is what they're proposing. Whether that will pass or not, we don't know. We hope it does. But if you've got a contractual period and it's shorter, stick with that.
Okay.
In that 9 month period, you can do a light touch dismissal. So if it's not working out, then you don't have to run the full capability policy. You can do a light touch, but light touch means we're still having a conversation that says this isn't working, this isn't why. Give people an opportunity to adjust that. But if we're managing probation robustly, we'll be setting clear goals, setting clear expectations. We'll be meeting with the individual regularly and making sure it's working out. We'll be helping to reset their expectations, point them in the right direction. And if within that 9 month period, it really isn't working out, then as long as you serve notice within that 9 months, then the person can go through a shorter process than your full-on capability, which generally tends to be sort of a 3-step process with 3 meetings, giving people the opportunity to improve.
That's really great information. And actually, I think understandably, any change in employment law can make people a bit nervous. Actually, especially maybe companies with a smaller HR team, maybe, you know, earlier in their growth period, because it's new. We haven't got the benefit of someone who's maybe ridden 20 years experience here. But hopefully as well, it really will make people think about their onboarding process. There's always a positive from things that happen. How do they balance, you know, if you're looking at the compliance and employment rights here, whilst also creating a great onboarding process, is this something people should be really nervous about? Or is there a way to channel this into something great?
No, it's a real positive because it means that we will be supporting people. We will be, if we take it from a very positive perspective, it's about helping people to feel like they belong from day one. It's ensuring that we've got the right person, the right fit for the organisation, for the team, for the role, and making sure that we're creating a culture of engagement where people from day one feel that they belong. So if we can help people to be as productive as possible, as early as possible, by setting those SMART objectives, by having regular meetings and communication, it's about improving communication, which can only be a good thing.
And I guess asking the question, we're all humans, how are you finding it?
Yeah.
And then asking it again. Asking it 3 times. We know if you ask 3 times, you'll get a different answer to the first time. Ask and ask away.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is about, probation is about success. It's about let's help this person be as successful as quickly as possible so that they feel like they belong, they feel like they're part of the furniture almost, and everybody engages fully. Whereas if someone's not working out, if they're not the right fit for the role, and the manager isn't giving feedback, and even if they are working out and the manager isn't giving feedback, that doubt that exists. You know, I was delivering training on this last week, and somebody said she was in a volunteer role and she was on the verge of resigning from the volunteer role because she hadn't had any feedback in 9 months.
Wow.
And there was an award ceremony and she won the award for Volunteer of the Year.
And she had no idea.
She had no idea. Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
She'd had no feedback.
I mean, you can ask my manager. I love feedback. If you know, I am definitely a sort of person. I crack on and do the job, but I love somebody to give me a pat on the head. Or actually, I really love constructive criticism. Help me grow. Help me be better. I'm 10 years in tenure. It doesn't change from day one to 10 years, really, does it?
Yeah. And it's so important that we help to reposition. If people are moving in the wrong direction, reposition quickly. Have the communication really early on, be really clear on what you're expecting, and that person can fly if they're in the right role for them. But if they're not in the right role, have the conversation that says, how do I help you find the right role?
Yeah.
You know, don't take the confidence out of them.
I think we've just covered that. The next subject we have here is sort of really drilling into managing probation effectively. And I think we've covered that really well in the conversations that we've had. It might be a good opportunity maybe to regroup, and we just kind of want to talk about 3 key takeaway points. I don't know, I'm throwing this at you here, Jacqui, so no pressure. But, if I was to ask you to describe in 3 words, what do you think defines, what does good look like for an effective probation period? If there were 3 key takeaways that people can remember as a checklist in their head, have I done A, B, C?
Yeah.
What does that look like to you?
So have I set clear expectations? So, and in clear expectations, SMART objectives, because that covers 5 aspects of setting expectations. So is it specific, measurable? Is it achievable? Is it realistic? Is it part of the role? Is it time bound? So have I set real SMART, clear expectations? Am I communicating clearly in, yes, you're going in the right direction, or this needs to shift? Here's a change that we need to make here. So that regular communication as well, having those regular check-ins, those regular communications. And the third one, am I asking them for feedback from me? What do you need from me as a manager? And in my 12-month training program for managers and leaders, that for me is gold dust. What do you need from me as a manager? Am I delivering what they need? It's not all about are they delivering what we need. Am I delivering what they need for success? Because it is about helping people to succeed.
And they can help you succeed as well. It gets the support, the appreciation. You don't have to be best friends. I always think, with managers, you don't need to be best friends, but you need to respect. And you want that to be both ways, don't you?
You do. You do want that 2-way respect. And respect is something that, it's not an automatic given necessarily. I mean, it should be that we have that two-way respect, but actually people come with their own baggage and their own experience of being managed. And my experience of being managed up until my very final manager was awful.
I can't do this
managers. So I always brought baggage. I always brought, am I allowed to say this? Am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to be me? Whereas my very last manager, the HR director, in my last employment, she was brilliant, because she, on her first day, said to me, "What do you need from me?" I was like, wow, I've never been asked that before, but I know. I know what I want.
I hope she's watching this.
Sorry?
I hope she's watching this.
Oh, well, she was actually on a webinar that I did a few years ago, and I said about her being my best manager. And then when we met up for coffee, I said, "I do hope you know that I was talking about you." She said, "No, I thought you were talking about somebody else."
Oh.
No, I was talking about you. You are a brilliant manager.
That's imposter syndrome in HR right there, isn't it? It really is. Yeah.
Maybe that's one we should do.
Well, yes, I think we might be covering that on a different level, actually, mightn't we? So some exciting topics coming up. So, and if a new hire is clearly struggling during probation, it's clearly the wrong match for whatever reason, be that a shift in their life circumstances, being a shift in the company's direction. We've all heard stories of joining a business and then suddenly there's a massive change that was unexpected or uncommunicated for certain reasons, or it's simply just not right. It's simply just not right. How should the HR manager approach that conversation? And is it for that HR manager to always speak directly to the candidate? Is it about supporting your managers in where you talk about the light touch, or?
It's the manager. So the manager needs to have the conversation, because there's nothing worse if things aren't going well and you don't generally see HR from one day to the next. There's nothing worse than being told HR need to see you. Automatically back foot. And if it's a surprise for the individual, then that's wrong. Something has fallen over if this is a surprise. But the light touch is very much about have a meeting, tell them that it's not working out, tell them why it's not working out, help them to understand. And you can, in that one meeting, you can then say, unfortunately, we need to part ways. I feel that you can have what I call a dignified exit, where you can part ways and help that person to maintain their confidence. So by all means, tell them about the things that they are doing well and where you see their strengths, and maybe think about it from different perspectives. I once had a conversation with somebody who worked for me 2 years ago and said, "Is this the right role for you? Do you really see yourself doing this?" Because I could see that it wasn't. And she said, "No." And I said, "Okay, let's park the conversation I was prepared for. Let's do some career coaching then." And rather than coming from me as, yes, I'm a coach and I'm a therapist, I thought, let's have a bit of a third party here. Let's ask ChatGPT. What coaching questions do we need to be asking? And we worked through it together. And I took her through that. And then that was a Friday. And on the Monday, she came in. She said, that job we were talking about, what I should be doing. Yeah. Saw it when I went to my local gym, and now I don't know what to do. Said you're applying for it.
Amazing. There's a book. My friend recommended it. Diana, actually, she used to work at the One Group. Many people may know. The Ikigai, I think it's called, and it's a Japanese book, a Japanese theory, but it'd be really interesting. I think that slots quite nicely into careers as well. But so coming back to culture and engagement angle here, so changing slightly directly, how can we manage the probation impact? So re-ask this question. How can the way we manage the probation impact long-term engagement and retention? So what's the direct result of our probation management on long-term engagement and retention?
So the long-term impact, it is, if you're getting it right, you are building that respectful relationship. You are creating trust, and you're creating safety. You're creating an environment where people know it's okay to fail, to make mistakes, because probation is about learning. You don't know, yes, you know how to do your job, but you don't necessarily know how to do it in this environment, in this organisation, and what their expectations are. So it's a two-way process of learning about each other. But the more that we can support people, the better the outcome will always be. So we need to clearly communicate. We need to provide that clarity and that support from day one. It is about providing support for success, helping people to be the best they can be as quickly as possible, getting the best from them, getting them in a position where, yeah, we can sign off your probation, you are permanently employed, and your contract and all of your employment rights are moving forward. That's clear. It's about providing that regular feedback and having that regular communication. And it doesn't have to be formal. You know, informal, regular, light touch points where you're constantly checking in. How are you doing? What do you need? How's it going? What's exciting you this week? What's worrying you this week? What are your challenges? Having those regular conversations and setting those realistic, achievable goals. That helps people. You are then providing a fair and consistent approach for the organisation and across the organisation. And I think too often what I find is that organisations, you might have a manager who's brilliant and they're doing that. They're having the consistent conversations and they're regularly giving feedback and they're helping people to onboard effectively. And then you've got other managers who are just, I'll tell you when you're doing it wrong. And others who are just totally hands off and who lack the confidence to kind of have those difficult conversations. So rather than it being reliant on somebody naturally being a good manager, if we have processes for managing probation and onboarding that everybody aligns with, and we give our managers training to do that, then we'll have the best outcomes possible.
It's supporting the managers, isn't it, in helping them communicate to influence. So that's great. And I think you've touched on this already. Actually, I think you might have just covered it, because I was going to ask the direct question of, what role should HR play in supporting managers to lead probation well, especially for new or less experienced managers. So actually, I think you've covered most of this already in what we've just kind of touched on. But when we look at new or less experienced managers, do you think they need more support than others? It might not be. You might find you have really experienced managers and actually they need more support than anybody else. So
it really depends on the manager and on their skill set. And because I think a lot of times people are put into a management role because they're great technicians. They're great at the day job, so therefore the next thing is we're going to make you a manager, and then they don't get those skills. It's a very different skill set to say being a software developer or being a scientist or being great at writing copy in a marketing communications role. It's a very different skill set. So HR need to provide the training and the policies and the procedures and the guidance for managers. But what I think they need to do is coach their managers, not do it for their managers, or else they become the go-to person for anything that's slightly messy related to people.
And I think, we talk about managers, and I'm self-confessed, I'm an awful manager. I care too much, or I get frustrated. I don't always pause. I'm an awful manager, but and I know that about myself. And when you talk about going into management, I've always said, you have leaders and you have managers, and they don't have to be one and the same thing. And it's really interesting. I think people, sometimes we go through a journey, we try and manage and we go, oh, not the best person for the job. And actually, when you're talking about probations, it's really important, I think, for managers to be able to stand up and say, you've given me all this support. We're doing it for me, and it's not a failure. And I guess maybe that's part of this somewhere. It might be another topic of how do you have a chat with your people manager to say maybe you're not in the right role. But if I was to chat to you, a final bit of advice. So if you could only give one golden rule, one golden rule for HR managers when you're looking at managing the onboarding, the day one rights, the probation, all of these areas, what would that be?
The one rule, the one key takeaway really is that if you could treat every new starter like they're a valued permanent member of the team from day one, set clear expectations, have structured conversations, provide feedback, provide support, provide guidance, and make sure that you follow a fair, consistent, transparent process that you document well. Then if we get to a point where we come to a mutual agreement that this is not the right role, then you can have that dignified exit and that supported exit rather than knocking people's confidence and pulling the rug out from people when they think they're doing well and suddenly, no, you don't have a job. How does that happen?
That's fantastic. And then I guess, so if I was to just flip that round a little bit, we could have a lot of employees watching this. We could have somebody going through probation at the moment. What advice could you give to an employee? Because there is burden on two sides of the fence here when we're talking about, probation periods. So if you're an employee watching this and you're currently going through your probation, what bit of advice would you give to that person if you don't feel that your probationary period is being managed effectively at the moment?
I would say it's very much ask for feedback, guide it. Too often I hear people say things about, well, my manager hasn't done that. And I'm like, well, it's a two-way street. Take ownership. This is your career. Own your career, own your own development. If your manager lacks confidence in this, they might be a new manager, they might have been managing people for years and they just think, oh, well, they'll get on with it, whatever. If you need more feedback, if you need more one-to-ones, own that and talk to your manager and say, this is what I need. Be really clear on what you need from them because you want to see it be a success as well. So if you've got any doubts about your manager's approach, and I can give a live example. I have somebody who works for me now, Abby, she's my trainer. And when she joined me, she said, haven't had a one-to-one with my manager for years. She came from a different industry. And I thought, in my head, my frame of reference is, I had someone who worked for me as a trainer and he liked to have weekly one-to-ones. So I thought, okay, she's like that. She wants a weekly one-to-one. So we were having weekly one-to-ones. By week 4, she said, can we just stop this? I've never had so many one-to-ones in all my life. And I said, oh, that was what you wanted.
And it's hard, isn't it? We talk about this so simply, don't we? Managers, probation, conversations, communication is obviously the biggest thing that's coming out of this today. Good, clear, concise communication. But we're all people at the end of it. We really are. And I found this really valuable myself. I mean, Jacqui, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, to come and do this for us, for our community. I think it's worth saying to everybody, we have briefly touched on many important topics here today. Please do reach out. Any questions, you can come to me directly. Obviously, Jacqui will give you her details quite shortly. I should tag on, obviously, we are also here for many other areas. We'll have other topics coming up, but we'd love to hear your ideas. If you've got any struggles, if there's any hot topics that you would really love to get a bit of insight to, and a LinkedIn Live such as this you feel could be valuable, just shout out, reach out and let us know.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Nice. So thank you, Jacqueline. And from my perspective as well, I'm going to be putting together just a document for people if they want to know more about the changes to the Employment Rights Bill, because we've only touched on that managing probation, but there are lots of changes with the bill. and I'm going to put together a document, and if people would like a copy of that, just DM me, get in touch, or if they'd like any guidance or support at all with their people strategy, then do get in touch.